Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library. I'm Anthony Murphy of Mythical Ireland. This is Live Irish Myths, episode number 153. We are having this episode tonight on Tuesday, the 5th of October, 2021, in place of the one we were supposed to do last night, which was interrupted by a slight global meltdown of the Facebook platform. That also affected Instagram and WhatsApp, but as we don't live stream on those platforms, that wasn't a problem. Instead of this episode, the planned one, we just did a conversation Q&A question and answer session, which I think was enjoyable. I certainly enjoyed it. Tonight I've started a little bit early, and that's because I actually need to finish a little bit early, if that's okay with everyone. I have to collect kids from music lesson, which I didn't realize when I said last night that we'd postpone the first of the Tuan MacCairill episodes to tonight. Also, just before coming on air this evening, myself and one of my sons have been unblocking the washing machine. I don't know if any of you do this yourselves or whether you get your plumber to do it. I've always done it. Our washing machines over the years have always got clogged. Something gets stuck, between the drum and the filter or in the filter. And there's like a rubber flexible pipe that runs from the drum down to the filter that needs to be taken off, and it's very awkward to get to. And the screws were not in the right position for accessing easily with a screwdriver. Had to be unscrewed by hand. Tedious affair. The kitchen right now the kitchen floor is soaked. There's water everywhere. The block is gone. I suspect the washing machine will work again when it's pushed back into place. We got the plug wet, which means it can't be plugged in for a while. I think basically what I'm trying to say is you don't want Anthony Murphy doing your plumbing. Definitely hire the professionals when your washing machine is on the blink or there's something wrong. Definitely don't get me involved. And certainly not while I'm watching the clock for the live stream saying, oh, the live stream's coming soon. If it's okay with you all, I'm gonna... Hello, everybody. You're welcome. If it's okay with everybody, I'm just going to get straight into it. I just want to make sure, just before I do, I do see comments from Facebook and from YouTube. We are streaming on... No, that's the problem. Believe it or not, folks, it doesn't seem that... Oh, yeah. Okay, that's all right. That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. That's all right. I'm streaming simultaneously on the Mythical Ireland Facebook page, the Mythical Ireland community on Facebook, and on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. I'm going to get straight into things tonight because I have to finish at 9 and go and collect kids from music. I hope this is acceptable to you all. I will say hello to people as we go along, but rather than spend 10 or 15 minutes like we usually do at the beginning, I think it would be better if we just kind of skipped on because there's a lot to get through tonight. I am reading the first part of a two-part episode. Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I found 50 cent in the filter. We knew, of course, that was part of the problem. When the washing machine was on, you could just click, 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 click. This rapid clicking as the filter motor is spinning. So I'm reading from James Stevens's Irish Fairy Tales, which was first published all the way back in 1924 by Macmillan and Company Limited. This edition is 1995, and it is one of those facsimile reprints. So it even has the original pen and ink drawings. I'll show you one of those. There's Tuan. I'm sorry. It's like always back to front, Always forget that the camera is showing you what's back to front. He looks a little bit like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, doesn't he? But anyway, we'll get to that shortly. So the first of two sections, the story is split into relatively short chapters, and there are 11 chapters. And I propose tonight to read the first 5 chapters and to read the rest of the story in the next episode. 50 Cent is an American rapper, and how he got in your filter will be a mythic story, says Joe Butler. Yeah, brilliant. Just so that I'm not ignoring, I will keep an eye on the Mythical Ireland community, where Anne Scott Doherty is watching. Glad to have 2 this week. Well, there you go. Spoilt. Thanks to Mark Zuckerberg and his friends and his employees over at Facebook. Can you imagine the panic? There was lots of funny. There were lots of funny posts on Twitter all about it. About can you imagine all the IT guys now, down on their hunkers or with their heads stuck in, router cabinets with their backsides in the air. But anyway, we got it resolved eventually. I'm sure a lot of you were in the same boat as me. I had to find some human beings to interact with. I managed to speak to some members of my family. They seem like nice people. So this is the story of Tuan MacCairill, and this is chapter 1. Hope everybody is comfortable and that you have something to drink, glass of water, cup of tea, something stronger, drop of the crater. Although we had what was his name? Was it Omar last night, who was making funny comments and then admitted to being drunk? Brilliant. You don't know what people are at on the other end, which is probably why in some cases it's better that the audience is on the other side of the internet and not actually sitting in the room, Anyway, I look forward to our first real gathering when it happens. Gemma McGowan is in the house, and as is Lexi Erickson, and Porrick Byrne, and Julie M, and Mandy McCurl, and loads of people. Joe Butler, Kees Knecht, I don't know how to pronounce your name, from Holland. Deborah Williams, Kieran Cotter, Jane Lidkey, Barbara Barney, John Main, Paula Snow Queen, Pat Noon, John McHugh gets another mention, Sheena Yusuf, etc., etc. Paula Snow Queen says she's on the sofa. There you go. All I can say is, I hope you have it to yourself. Finnian, the abbot of Moville, went southwards and eastwards in great haste. News had come to him in Donegal that there were yet people in his own province who believed in gods that he did not approve of, and the gods that we do not approve of are treated scurvily even by saintly men. And there it gives you a taste, perhaps a little bit of an insight into how certainly some of the monks and abbots would have viewed the pagan deities of the day. He was told of a powerful gentleman who observed neither Saint's Day nor Sunday. A powerful person, said Finnian. All that, was the reply. We shall try this person's power, said Finnian. He is reputed to be a wise and hardy man, said his informant. We shall test his wisdom and his hardihood. There you go. I didn't even know there was such word as hardihood. He is, that gossip whispered. He is a magician. I will magician him, cried Finnian angrily. Where does that man live? He was informed, and he proceeded in that direction without delay. In no great time he came to the stronghold of the gentleman who followed ancient ways, and he demanded admittance in order that he might preach and prove the new God, and exorcise and terrify and banish even the memory of the old one. For to a God grown old, time is as ruthless as to a beggar man grown old. Heard a shot is in the house, as is the Rins Ranger, Lillian Cruz, Nuala Doyle. Brilliant, you're all welcome. But the Ulster gentleman refused Finnian admittance. He barricaded his house, he shuttered his windows, and in a gloom of indignation and protest, he continued the practices of 10,000 years, and would not hearken to Finnian calling at the window or to time knocking at his door. I love that. But of those adversaries, it was the first he redoubted. Finian loomed on him as a portent and a terror, but he had no fear of time. Indeed, he was the foster brother of time, and so disdainful of the bitter god that he did not even disdain him. He leaped over the scythe, he dodged under it, and the sole occasions on which time laughs is when he chances on Tuan, the son of Cairill, the son of Murdoch Redneck. Love that. So, Facebook is not broadcasting any video, says Lillian. Anyone else having that problem? I seriously hope that is just, without sounding, Facebook is down. Again? Are you serious? Let me have a look. Oh, Facebook is down. Again? It's working here. Are you serious? Okay. So a lot of people reporting that Facebook is crashing. Paula Snow Queen's not having any problems. Gemma McGowan can see me. Yay! Good one, Gemma. And it is working here. Facebook is crashing. Très strange. They're probably still fixing things. Yeah, well, look, let's just plough on, shall we? Now, Finian could not abide that any person, this is chapter 2, by the way, that any person should resist both the gospel and himself. Sounds a little bit like the Old Testament God, you know? He's a little bit annoyed that somebody should resist him. And he proceeded to force the stronghold by peaceful but powerful methods. He fasted on the gentleman, and he did so to such purpose that he was admitted to the house. For to an hospitable heart, the idea that a stranger may expire on your doorstep from sheer famine cannot be tolerated. Wow. Even if he's trying to proselytize and convert you and threaten you with the lake of fire. There you go. Brilliant. Is everybody okay? No problems here. So some people reporting problems and others not. Don't forget that if you want to go to YouTube, the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel seems to be displaying the live stream with no difficulties if Facebook is giving you a problem. And if it is and you can't hear me, you're not going to hear what I just said. So what's the point? Forgive me. The gentleman, however, did not give in without a struggle. He thought that when Finian had grown sufficiently hungry, he would lift the siege and take himself off to some place where he might get food, like the local Golden Arches, otherwise known as McDonald's to you and me. It's like Finian rattling at Tuan's door, saying, "Could you tell me the directions to the nearest McDonald's?" Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. But he did not know Finian. Excuse me. The great abbot sat down on a spot just beyond the door and composed himself to all that might follow from his action. He bent his gaze on the ground between his feet and entered into a meditation from which he would only be released by admission or death. Wow. So there you go. An example of an early Christian abbot in Ireland. This is a myth, but who knows? It might be based on some factual remnant. Appears to have been able to meditate to the point of either being woken for admission or dying. So there you go. It might be something of a, how do you pronounce that word? Rinpoche, is it? You know? Anyway, let's not get distracted. The first day passed quietly. Often the gentleman would send a servitor to spy if that deserter of the gods was still before his door, and each time the servant replied that he was still there. "He will be gone in the morning," said the hopeful master. On the morrow, the state of siege continued. And through that day the servants were sent many times to observe through spy holes. "Go," he would say, "and find out if the worshipper of new gods has taken himself away." But the servants returned each time with the same information. The new druid is still there, they said. All through that day, no one could leave the stronghold, and the enforced seclusion wrought on the minds of the servants, while the cessation of all work banded them together in small groups that whispered and discussed and disputed. Yeah, major Facebook issues. There you go. Well, YouTuber, happy days, huh? Then these groups would disperse to peep through the spy hole at the patient, immobile figure seated before the door, wrapped in a meditation that was timeless and unconcerned. Almost like the Buddha himself. They took fright at the spectacle, and once or twice a woman screamed hysterically and was bundled away with a companion's hand clapped on her mouth, so that the ear of their master should not be affronted. He has his own troubles, they said. It is a combat of the gods that is taking place. So much for the women. But the men were also uneasy. They prowled up and down, tramping from the spy hole to the kitchen, and from the kitchen to the turreted roof. And from the roof they would look down on the motionless figure below and speculate on many things, including the staunchness of man, the qualities of their master, and even the possibility that the new gods might be as powerful as the old. From these peepings and discussions, they would return languid and discouraged. If, said one irritable guard, if we buzzed a spear at that persistent stranger, or if one slung at him with a jagged pebble. What? His master demanded wrathfully. Is a spear to be thrown at an unarmed stranger? And from this house? And he soundly cuffed that indelicate servant. Be at peace, all of you, he said, for hunger has a whip, and he will drive the stranger away in the night. The household retired to wretched beds, but for the master of the house there was no sleep. He marched his halls all night, going often to the spy hole to see if that shadow was still sitting in the shade. And pacing thence, tormented, preoccupied, refusing even the nose of his favourite dog as it pressed lovingly into his closed palm. On the morrow, he gave in. The great door was swung wide, and two of his servants carried Finnian into the house. For the saint could no longer walk or stand upright by reason of the hunger and exposure to which he had been submitted. But his frame was tough as the unconquerable spirit that dwelt within it, and in no long time he was ready for whatever might come of dispute or anathema. Being quite re-established, he undertook the conversion of the master of the house, and the siege he laid against that notable intelligence was long spoken of among those who are interested in such things. He had beaten the disease of Mugain, Mugain. He had beaten his own pupil, the great column killer. He beat Tuan also, and just as the latter's door had opened to the persistent stranger, so his heart opened, and Finnian marched there to do the will of God and his own will. Astro Gypsy is here, as is Karen Gogus. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Cake or death, yeah. Let them eat cake, huh? Chapter 3. One day, they were talking together about the majesty of God and his love. For although Tuan had now received much instruction on this subject, he yet needed more. And he laid as close a siege on Finnian as Finnian had before that laid on him. But man works outwardly and inwardly. After rest, he has energy. After energy, he needs repose. So, when we have given instruction for a time, we need instruction. and must receive it, or the spirit faints, and wisdom herself grows bitter. Therefore Finian said, "Tell me now about yourself, dear heart." I like that, dear heart. Burr Whelan is in the house. Hello there. Good evening to you, Burr. Hope you're keeping well. But Tuam was avid of information about the true God, capital T, capital G. No, 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 he said. The past has nothing more of interest for me, and I do not wish anything to come between my soul and its instruction. Continue to teach me, dear friend and saintly father. I will do that, Finian replied, but I must first meditate deeply on you, and must know you well. Tell me your past, my beloved, for a man is his past, and is to be known by it. But Tuam pleaded, let the past be content with itself, for man needs forgetfulness as well as memory. See the value of mythology, don't you see it? It's wonderful. It's a wonderful life instruction, isn't it? Desiree is in the house, I think. Hello there. Carol Barrett is here. Desiree, we have missed you also. Let's pop that comment up on the stream. Hello there. Hello there to our latest Coloradoan. Somebody's going to teach me a lesson here. Tell me how it's pronounced. Desiree, I hope Colorado is treating you well. Jan Callahan is in London. Finally have the fortune to catch you. Brilliant. Funky Pixie 1. Love it. Yeah, brilliant. The feeling is mutual, Desiree. We are delighted to have you all on board. But yeah, welcome to the Big Blue House. Where was I? My son, said Finian, all that has ever been done has been done for the glory of God, and to confess our good and evil deeds is part of instruction. For the soul must recall its acts and abide by them, or renounce them by confession and penitence. Tell me your genealogy first, and by what descent you occupy these lands and stronghold. Then I will examine your acts and your conscience. So there really is the feeling that Tuam has come to the confessional, and Finian is the priest sitting in the darkness, asking him to profess his sins. Tuam replied obediently, I am known as Tuan, son of Cairill. In Irish, Tuan MacCairill. Mac being the Irish for son. Yes, the Rins Ranger recognized it. The Big Blue House. No, maybe you didn't. What is the program I was singing from? Might surprise some of you. I'll give you a clue. We used to watch it as a family. Maeve Callahan is in the house. Hello there, Maeve. Welcome along. Good evening to you. Good afternoon. Reminds me of the conversion of Ethelbert by Augustine in the 6th century. There you go, Joan. Yeah, probably. You know, you never know. The person who wrote this down, the scribe, may well have encountered similar stories on it. There you go, Joan. Yes, indeed. Joan has it. And your prize is an extra 10 minutes listening to me waffling. There you go. Yeah, Bear in the Big Blue House. Used to watch it with kids when they were young. Oh, God, do I miss those days. I am known as Tuan, son of Cairill, son of Muradach Redneck. That's Muredac, which I think might be a sort of a variation of that name that we encounter at Monastery Boyce. Muradach. Woohoo! Joan, yeah, welcome to the Big Blue House. Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. Now it's time to go. I'm not going to do any more of that. Son of Muradach Redneck. And these are the hereditary lands of my father. The saint nodded. I am not as well acquainted with Ulster genealogies as I should be, yet I know something of them. I am by blood a Leinster man, he continued. Mine is a long pedigree, Tuan murmured. Finian received that information with respect and interest. I also, he said, have an honourable record. So Tuan is saying he's a long pedigree. Finian takes that to mean that he's honourable. There you go. His host continued. Of course, this was part and parcel of what we were talking about on many live streams, and is one of the new chapters of the forthcoming expanded Mythical Ireland book. You know that the scribes and the kings and the druids and the bards were all friends. They're all, in with each other. And to magnify the king, who was a patron of the monastery, the scribe would write it or imagine a genealogy tracing his lineage all the way back to Eramon of the Milesians, or even further back, if you like. And so that gave you pedigree. His host continued, I am indeed Tuan, the son of Starn, the son of Sarah, who was brother to Parthalon. Yes. Just a reminder, if you're having taxi for Murphy, if you're having difficulties with Facebook, a reminder that we are also streaming on YouTube, where it appears that there are no issues at the moment. So there you go. Straight over to youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. Don't forget to subscribe while you're there to get notified of future streams and videos and other things. But, said Finian in bewilderment, there is an error here, for you have recited two different genealogies. I hope some of you picked that up. He said his name was Tuan MacCairill, and then he said, I am indeed Tuan, the son of Starn. How can he be the son of Cairill and the son of Starn? Well, let's pick up on that. Different genealogies indeed, Tuan replied thoughtfully, but they are my genealogies. I do not understand this, Finian declared roundly. I am now known as Tuan MacCairill, the other replied. But in the days of old, I was known as Tuan MacStarn MacSarah. Tuan, son of Starn, son of Sarah. The brother of Parthalon, the saint gasped. That is my pedigree, Tuan said. And what were the Parthalon and his people famous for? Well, for invading Ireland and then dying of a plague a month later. But, Finian objected in bewilderment, Parthalon came to Ireland not long after the flood. I came with him, said Tuan mildly. The saint pushed his chair back hastily and sat staring at his host. And as he stared, the blood grew chill in his veins, and his hair crept along his scalp and stood on end. Chapter 4. Oh, the drama. Samantha Healy is in the house. Hello, Samantha. So, yeah, if ever you want me to come and read to your kids, I was going to say, you don't have to pay me. I think you'll have to pay them to put up with the fright. But Finian shivers. Yes, Mandy, shivers. But Finian was not one who remained long in bewilderment. He thought on the might of God, and he became that might, and was tranquil. I'll read that again. I was doubting that I had it right, but apparently I do. He thought on the might of God, and he became that might, and it was tranquil, sorry. He was one who loved God and Ireland, and to the person who could instruct him in these great themes, he gave all the interest of his mind and the sympathy of his heart. It is a wonder you tell me, my beloved, he said. And now you must tell me more. What must I tell? Asked Tuan resignedly. Tell me of the beginning of time in Ireland and of the bearing of Parthalon, the son of Noah's son. I've almost forgotten him, said Tuan. A greatly bearded, greatly shouldered man he was, a man of sweet deeds and sweet ways. Continue, my love, said Finian. He came to Ireland in a ship. So before the 20th century, not to put too fine a point on it, but everybody came to Ireland, came in a ship. 24 men and 24 women came with him. But before that time, no man had come to Ireland, and in the western parts of the world, no human being lived or moved. So I need to explain something here for a moment. Thank you, Burr. Facebook user, who is that? That's Tom King. Oh, wait, now it's working. Is that you, Tom? Yes. And Adele Perth is there as well. Hello, Tom. Fulge. Thank you. And hello, good morning to Adele, who's in Australia. What a treat. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. So I need to explain something here for a moment. So Tuan MacCairill's story is very similar. I think we've mentioned this before, but here we're seeing it. It's very similar to the story of Fintan MacBochra. Tuan is supposed to be the sole survivor of the Parthalonian invasion. Fintan MacBochra was the sole survivor of what was in the Book of Invasion said to be the first arrival, which was Cairill, who came with 50 women or thrice 50, depending on which version you read, and 3 men, of whom Fintan was the sole survivor of all of those who arrived because the flood overtook them when they came here, the great flood of Noah. Cairill was the granddaughter of Noah, and as we see here, Tuan was a grandson of Parthalon, who was the son of Noah's son. In other words, Parthalon was the grandson of Noah. So trying to establish the pedigree back to the biblical characters, as it were. And so, according to this version, before the arrival of the Partholonians, nobody had come to Ireland. And of course, according to the Fintan MacBochra story in Laura Gawala, it was Cairill and the women friends of hers and the 3 men, including Fintan MacBochra, who were the first people to arrive in Ireland. And they had been advised to go there by Noah, who had refused Cairill a place in the ark. I mean, he took 2 gazelles and 2 duck-billed platypus and, if we're to believe it, 2 orca whales, and refused his own granddaughter. But the advice he gave her was to go to a land where no men, no people dwelt, because such a land would have no sin in it and therefore would not be subject to God's fierce judgment. And of course, what happened when they came to Ireland was what's bloody typical is that there's 3 men on the boat, and there's, if you believe the stories, there's thrice 50 women, or 50 women, depending on what you read. And after a short while, the women are taking a fancy to the men, and the men are taking a fancy to the women. But the thing is, 3 into 150, it's not that it doesn't go, but it's like 50 each. And so it's a case of lust fell upon the men. Now, Fintan was the one who, what's the word? Who decried it? No, who shunned the advances of the women and fled. And apparently that's why he was saved. That is absolutely the Christian incursion into the myth. The stories of Tuan and Fintan, I think, are probably original, but greatly altered to suit the religious narrative. So Laura and who was the third man? Fintan, Laura, and can't remember right now. Yeah, well, they had their way with some of the women, and sure, look, the consequence was they were drowned because God got angry with them because they brought sin to Ireland. So there you go. I hope I've explained the similarities between the stories. So in Laura Gawala, Cairill comes, Fintan is the sole survivor. A lot of that is included in later tradition. Then the Partholonians come. But according to this story, the story of Tuan MacCairill, Parthalon was the first to arrive. Owen Martin makes what I consider to be a very perspicacious point. I like that word. That is, that it wasn't Noah's flood. It was just a typical wet day in Ireland. Yes, yes, yes. I wonder if Finton's denial of the women was the precursor to celibacy. Well, there you go. And that's why he was saved. Interesting. Yeah. Leon makes a good point, and that is that they have a dude calling another dude beloved. Yeah, there's quite a lot of love between these two. There's a bit of a bromance going on here, I think. Anyway, sorry about that. He came to... sorry, continue, my love, said Finian. He came to Ireland in a ship. 24 men and 24 women came with him, but before that time, no man had come to Ireland. And in the western parts of the world, no human being lived or moved. As we drew on Ireland from the sea, the country seemed like an unending forest. And that's very interesting, because that's an insight into Mesolithic Ireland, which is exactly what it must have looked like before the forest began to be cleared for farming in the Neolithic. Far as the eye could reach, and in whatever direction, there were trees. And from these there came the unceasing singing of birds. Over all that land the sun shone warm and beautiful, so that to our sea-weary eyes, our wind-tormented ears, it seemed as if we were driving on paradise. Apparently, Coda is outside because the kitchen floor is soaking wet because of the washing machine problem. If he persists with this barking, you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to let him in here. Do I want to do that live? He could do anything. He could jump on me. I'm telling you, he's liable to do anything. We landed and we heard the rumble of water going gloomily through the darkness of the forest. Following the water, we came to a glade where the sun shone and where the earth was warmed, and there Parthalon rested with his 24 couples, and made a city and a livelihood. There were fish in the rivers of Eire. There were animals in her coverts. Wild and shy and monstrous creatures ranged in her plains and forests. Creatures that one could see through and walk through. Wow. Long we lived in ease, and we saw new animals grow. Long we lived... Sorry. I was going to read the same thing again. Long we lived in ease, and saw... Sorry, I'm just trying to get my pencil ready here, because I want to take a note about that. Long we lived in ease, and we saw new animals grow. The bear, the wolf, the badger, the deer, and the boar. Parthalon's people increased until from 24 couples there came 5,000 people who lived in amity and contentment, although they had no wits. I may have been wrong about them only being here a month. They had no wits, Finian commented. They had no need of wits, Tuan said. I have heard that the firstborn were mindless, said Finian. Continue your story, my beloved. Then, sudden as a rising wind, between one night and a morning, there came a sickness that bloated the stomach and purpled the skin. And on the 7th day, all of the race of the Parthalon were dead, save one man only. There always escapes one man, said Finian thoughtfully. And I am that man, his companion affirmed. I am that man. Tuan shaded his brow with his hand, and he remembered backwards through incredible ages to the beginning of the world and the first days of Eire. And Finian, with his blood again running chill and his scalp crawling uneasily, stared backwards with him. Robert Friend is in the house. John Main might be right. He says celibacy was a misunderstanding. It was supposed to be celebrate, not celibate. Celibate. Lost in translation. Yes, indeed. Chapter 5. The dog is barking persistently. I'm not sure if you can even hear him, but if I bring him in, he might just settle down. Forgive me for a moment while I while I ask the animal into Now promise me you're going to behave. You're going to be good. You're going to be a good boy, aren't you? Here comes trouble. You're going to be good, aren't you? Yeah? Yes, you are. Yes. Yes. You're not going to be barking territorially in here like you are at the side of the house. As soon as somebody walks within 300 meters of the house, it's, "Row, row, 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 row. You're coming close to my territory." Row, 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 row. Yeah. I'm reading. I'm like, there's 64 people watching. Now behave, sit and lie down. Good boy. Tell on, my love, Finnian murmured. Chapter 5. Tarini Pendleton is in the house. Yes. I was alone, said Tuan. I was so alone that my own shadow frightened me. I was so alone that the sound of a bird in flight or the creaking of a dew-drenched bough whipped me to cover as a rabbit is scared to his burrow. Thought it might be cower, but it's cover. The creatures of the forest scented me and knew I was alone. They stole with silken pad behind my back and snarled when I faced them. The long grey wolves with hanging tongues and staring eyes chased me to my cleft rock. There was no creature so weak but it might hunt me. There was no creature so timid but it might outface me. And so I lived for 2 tens of years and 2 years, until I knew that all that a beast surmises and had forgotten all that a man had known. 64 people and their dogs, says Desiree. Correct and right. He likes history, Irish history too, says Owen Martin. I could pad as gently as any. I could run as tirelessly. I could be invisible and patient as a wild cat crouching among leaves. I could smell danger in my sleep and leap at it with wakeful claws. I could bark and growl and clash with my teeth and tear with them. Tell on, my beloved, said Finian. You shall rest in God, dear heart. At the end of that time, said Tuan, Nemed, the son of Agnaman, came to Ireland with a fleet of 34 barks, and in each bark there were 30 couples of people. I have heard it, said Finian. My heart leaped for joy when I saw the great fleet rounding the land, and I followed them among scarped cliffs, leaping from rock to rock like a wild goat, while the ships tacked and swung, seeking a harbour. There I stooped to drink at a pool, and I saw myself in the chill water, and that's the drawing there that we showed earlier on, where he looks like Gollum. My precious. Sorry, I won't do that again. Apologies. I saw I saw that I was hairy and tufty and bristled as a savage boar, that I was lean as a stripped bush, that I was greyer than a badger, withered and wrinkled like an empty sack, naked as a fish. Oh, come here, listen, you're in here with me now. Don't be whimpering about going into the kitchen. There's nobody in there. The place is flooded. You wouldn't like it in there. You'll be slipping and sliding all over the place. Come down here and listen to the story. Come on. Naked as a fish, wretched as a starving crow in winter, and on my fingers and toes there were great curving claws, so that I looked like nothing that was known, like nothing that was animal or divine. And I sat by the pool, weeping my loneliness and wildness and my stern old age, and I could do no more than cry and lament between the earth and the sky, while the beasts that tracked me listened from behind the trees or crouched among bushes to stare at me from their drowsy covert. A storm arose, and when I looked again from my tall cliff, I saw that great fleet rolling as in a giant's hand. At times they were pitched against the sky and staggered aloft, spinning gustily there like wind-blown leaves. Then they were hurled from these dizzy tops to the flat, moaning gulf in the glassy, inky horror that swirled and whirled between 10 waves. At times, a wave leaped howling under a ship, and with a buffet dashed it into air, and chased it upwards with thunder, stroke on stroke, and followed again, close as a chasing wolf, trying with hammering on hammering to beat in the wide-wombed bottom and suck out the frightened lives through one black gape. Wow, very well translated. A wave fell on a ship and sank it down with a thrust, stern as though a whole sky had tumbled at it, and the bark did not cease to go down until it crashed and sank in the sand at the bottom of the sea. The night came, and with it 1,000 darknesses fell from the screeching sky. Not a round-eyed creature of the night might pierce an inch of that multiplied gloom. Not a creature dared creep or stand. For a great wind strode the world, lashing its league-long whips in cracks of thunder, and singing to itself, now in a world-wide yell, now in an ear-dizzying hum and buzz. Or with a long snarl and whine it hovered over the world, searching for life to destroy. Desiree says Coda was just a little bit early with his sound effects. He does this yawn, and you can hear him yawn, and then he kind of turns into a little moan as if to say, "I'm all on my own here. Somebody pay me some attention," you know. He goes, "Oh." Brilliant. Oh, sorry, I showed the wrong. Not that there was anything wrong with Barbara's comment. Yes, indeed. The dogs will be arguing over who is more internet famous. Yes, they certainly will. Is he Fintan MacBocra? Joan asked. Yeah, their stories are very similar. That one suspects that they are one and the same character, just different versions of the same story, you know. And at times, from the moaning and yelping blackness of the sea, there came a sound, thin drawn, as from millions of miles away, distinct as though uttered in the ear like a whisper of confidence. And I knew that a drowning man was calling on his God as he thrashed and was battered into silence, and that a blue-lipped woman was calling on her man as her hair whipped round her brows and she whirled about like a top. Around me, the trees were dragged from earth with dying groans. They leaped into the air and flew like birds. Great waves whizzed from the sea, spinning across the cliffs and hurtling to the earth in monstrous clots of foam. The very rocks came trundling and sidling and grinding among the trees. And in that rage and in that horror of blackness, I fell asleep, or I was beaten into slumber. There ends chapter 5. There also ends where I had intended to finish tonight. It's perhaps not as long as I thought it would be. You know that it's possible that we could have just kind of done the whole thing in one episode. However, given that I do have to depart at 9, I will not proceed. We will do the second half as promised. But in the meantime, let us refer to Laura Gowalla and let us just read a little bit about Parthalon. So that we can get the definitive account, as it were. Laura Gowalla, part 2, I think. Or is it part 3? We'll find out momentarily. Parthalon, part 3. There you go. St. Finnian and St. Ninian, one and the same, just various hands editing, says the Rins Ranger. I did not know that. Actually, we should also briefly find out what James MacKillop in the Celtic Dictionary of Oxford mythology has to say about Tuan, and undoubtedly will be comparing him with Fintan MacBocra. Tuan MacCairill, the sole survivor of the Partholonians, who tells the story of the Laura Gowalla, the Book of Invasions, to St. Finnian of Moville, of course, omitting the Cairill section. The son of Starn and brother of Parthalon, Tuan somehow survives the plague that has killed his people. Tuan was a brother of Parthalon. I didn't pick that up from what we were reading. I thought he was a grandson. I'm confused. But there are probably different versions, in fairness. Like Boan being married to Alkmaar, but then in other versions being a sister of Alkmaar. The son of Starn and brother of Parthalon, Tuan somehow survives the plague that has killed his people, and then lives through many generations under a series of metamorphoses as a stag, a boar, and an eagle, and that's to come in part 2 of the story. Finally, he's changed into a salmon who's caught and eaten by the wife of Cairill, who gives birth to him again in human form, so that he may recite the early history of Ireland. See John Carey, Scale, Tuan MacCairill, Eru 35, 1984. Doesn't actually liken him to Fintan, which I'm surprised about. Fintan Mac. Let's have a look for Fintan Mac. Fintan Mac Borcrad. See if he mentions the similarity with Tuan in the Fintan part. I'm kind of a little bit surprised, to be honest. Fintan MacCool for Bullock. No, sorry. I'm going the wrong way. Anthony, wake up, for goodness sake. Fintan MacBorcra, the only Irishman to survive the biblical flood. Fintan was a mythical seer whose name is cited in many texts. The Borcra or Bochna of his patronymic is never identified. It may refer to his mother or may imply the sea. He may yet be another figure derived from the shadowy Find implied in Ptolemy, 2nd century AD. According to the pseudo-history Laura Gowalla, Book of Invasions, Fintan was one of 3 men who accompanied the Lady Cairill, whom he took as a wife, and her 50 women 40 days before the flood. When the other 2 men died, all the women approached Fintan, who fled from them. A poem later ascribed to Fintan explains how he survived the flood when all others perished by hiding in the hill of Tunthinna, or Tultinna, over the River Shannon in County Tipperary. In another story, Fintan details in a dialogue with the Hawk of Achill how he escaped the flood. He had been 15 years old at the coming of the waters, but survived for another 5,500 years. Which is interesting because that's this sort of history since the arrival of farming in Ireland, fascinating. In surviving, he had been transformed into a one-eyed salmon, an eagle, and a hawk before resuming his own shape. The hawk responds that it is also very old and has witnessed many of the events Fintan describes, including the exploits of Cuchulainn, the coming of Christianity, and the whole history of the Western world. Fintan is usually presumed to be a seer of great knowledge, partially because of his animal transformations and also because of his great age, and becomes a patron of history and poetry. His wife of later years is Evlu, a sister of Lugh Láfada. See Kuno Meyer, colloquy between Fintan and the Hawk of Achill in Anecdota. Actually, we must read that. Haven't read that, and I do have it on the bookshelf. Doesn't make the comparison between Fintan and Tuan. Let me see. I have 10 minutes. Desiree, yes. You can get away with saying that. I can't. So I'm just going to put it on the screen. It's your fault. Here is the taking of Parthalon. Now Ireland was waste after the flood for a space of 311 years. Or perhaps 1,002 years, as others say. There's always an alternative version. Till Parthalon reached it, and that is more correct, for Abraham had 60 years complete when Parthalon took Ireland. That is, it was 940 and 2 years from Abraham back to the flood. Abraham's 60 years, along with the 40, make 100. You see, here's how the monks are trying to make the Irish pseudo-history fit with their biblical accounts. The 100, along with the 900, make 1,000, and there are 2 extra years, so that there were 1,002 years from the flood to the coming of Parthalon to Ireland. Almost sounds like something from a Monty Python sketch, doesn't it? Yes, Desiree, you're absolutely right, and I did say that. I definitely thought there was at least 200 episodes. And I still reckon there are at least probably another 50 that we could do. Moreover, there were 2,608 years from the beginning of the world to the coming of Parthalon into Ireland. 2,600 years, lacking 2 years from Adam to Abraham. Parthalon, son of Sarah, son of Shrew, son of Esru, son of Bath, son of Riphath Scot, from whom are the Scots. Or Parthalon, son of Sarah, son of Shrew, son of Esru, son of Bramant, son of Yochu, son of Magog, son of Japheth, son of Noah. He came thereafter out of Mygdonia, that is, out of Graecia Parva. He had a voyage of a month to Alcadia. A voyage of 9 days he had from Aladacia. I pronounced that wrong. A voyage of 9 days. Blah, blah, blah. Come on. Where's the bit where he lands in Ireland, for God's sake? This is all this nonsense of the monks trying to correlate things. Further, Ith was the name of the hireling whom he had, and from him is Mag Itha, my Itha. For it is he who cleared it. Toba, T-O-B-A, which would probably be pronounced Tova. T-O-B-H-A was another name for him, or Tova was one of the 2 hirelings whom Parthalon had, and that is correct, for it is Tova who slept with the wife of Parthalon sometime afterward, for Tova was a name of Parthalon himself. Here are the women of Parthalon, etc., etc., etc. Wouldst thou know wherefore Parthalon came forth from his land? 'Tis easy. Parthalon slew his mother and his father, seeking kingship for his brother. So he came to Ireland, fleeing from his kin murder. Wow, didn't know that bit. There you go. Parthalon killed his parents. And so thereafter plaguings came upon him in his kin murder. 9,000 in 1 week died for the guilt of his kin murder. Wow. These were the chieftains of Parthalon. Parthalon himself and Slania and Lyglinja and Ruria, his additional hireling, Ith, their wives, etc., etc. Not reading it all. I wanted to get to the bit where 4 plains were cleared by Parthalon in Ireland. My Ethria in Connachta, my Itha in Lyon, my Laharna in Dalnareja, my Lee in Uy MacUsh between Burr and Camus. For Parthalon found no plain in Ireland before him but the old plain of Elta in Eder. 7 years after the taking of Ireland by Parthalon, the first man of his company died. Fea, son of Torton, son of Shrew, son of Esru, uncle to Parthalon. And there he was buried in Ulra of Maifei, and from him Maifei is named. In the 3rd year thereafter was the first battle of Ireland in the princedom of Parthalon in Slevnia of Maitha against Kichol Clapperleg. Wow, that sounds like a medieval English name. Kichol Clapperleg of the Fomori, namely men with single legs and single arms, to wit demons with the forms of men. They fought against him, and the battle broke before Parthalon. A week were they fighting it, and not a man was slain there, for it was a magic battle. For that is the battle in which not one man received a mortal wound, nor yet expulsion. According to another authority, it broke before Parthalon, and there Kichol, son of Neil, was slain, and his people were hard pressed, and Parthalon received a mortal wound. Also, that it was of the gory darts of these wounds that he died after a long time following the battle. That is called 7 taking, namely the taking which took under Kichol in Inverdalman. 50 men and thrice 50 women were the tally of every ship of theirs, including Kichol, son of Neil, son of Garav, son of Tuachach, son of Uchmor, from Shliev Evor. Lomnach was his mother. 200 years had they a fishing and a fowling, till Parthalon came to them and fought the battle of Maitha, whence it was called the 7 taking. Kichol was slain and the Fomori destroyed. Funny that, because they came back to fight the Dadanans later at the second battle of Moitura. Interesting. 7 lake bursts over the land of Ireland in the time of Parthalon. Loch Mesca, which first burst forth in the 3rd year after the first battle. In the 12th year after the coming of Parthalon into Ireland, the burst of Loch Con and Loch Dechet in Connachta are they both, Connacht. The year after that, Slania, son of Parthalon, died, one of the 4 chiefs of Ireland who came with Parthalon. Where he was buried was in the stone heap of Shliev Slania. And that Slania is very like the name Slania, who was one of the Furvolog kings, who's also said to be buried in a place called Slania, which is Slane in County Meath, just up the river valley from us by 6 or 7 miles here from Drogheda and Slane. At the end of 2 years thereafter, the burst of Loch Leinne in Uí Mac Uis, Leinne, son of Parthalon, one of the 4 chiefs of Ireland, at the digging of his grave, it is then that the lake burst over the land, namely Loch Leinne. The burst of Loch Echtra between Slieve Modern and Slieve Fuat. When it was 10 years later, the burst of Loch Ruria, for what drowned him was the burst of his lake over him, and that is named Loch Ruria in Uli, in Ulster. Moreover, in the same year, the sea flow of Bren overland, and thus is that the 7th lake, Loch Cohen, is its other name. For Parthalon found not in Ireland before him more than 3 lakes and 9 rivers. The 3 lakes are Loch Limlig and Loch Fodravan, which is in Tralee, and at Slievemish in Muma, that's Tralee, and Finloch of Erosdownan. The 9 rivers, Boas between Dal Narija and Dalrieta, Rurtek, the river of Liffey, between Enail and Lyon, that's the Liffey of Dublin, I presume. Louis in Muma being the old Irish name for Munster in the south. Savar and Schlickach and Muad in Ifeachrach. These are territories, tribal territories. Modern in Chiarowan, and Find between Cairill Conal and Owen, and Banna between Lee and Ella. Of course, Cairill Conal were the northern Enail. At the end of 4 years after the burst of Bren, the death of Parthalon on the old plain of Elta of Edar. This is why it is called Old Plain, for never did branch of or twig of a wood grow on it. Wow. Who is that who's on the Mythical Ireland community from Boston, Drizzly Boston? That's Janet Moran. Hello, Janet. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. And good evening to Tess McKinney in Kansas. Parthalon died at the end of 30 years after his coming to Ireland. Ninus, son of Belus, was in the high kingship of the Orient at that time, for it is in the last year of the princedom of Zames that the death of Parthalon occurred on the old plain of Elta, and it is thus clear that Parthalon was not more than 30 years in Ireland. 2,628 years from the beginning of the world to the death of Parthalon, and 520 years from the death of Parthalon to the plaguing of his people. For it is 550 from the coming of Parthalon into Ireland to the plaguing of his people. Now it is in the plain of Elta of Edar that Parthalon died, of the venom of the wounds inflicted on him in the battle of Kichol Clapperny. This is why it was called My Nelta, the plain of flocks, for the birds of Ireland used to be sunning themselves upon it, for there was unbroken forest in Ireland then after the flood. His 4 sons divided Ireland into 4 parts, and that is the subject of a new chapter in Mythical Ireland, the partition of Ireland in mythology. This is the first division of Ireland. Ireland remained so divided until the plaguing of his people. There came a plague upon them on the Calends of May, as in at Bealtaine, the Monday of Beltaine. 9,000 died of that plague until the following Monday, upon Myelta, 5,004 men and 4,000 women who were dead between the 2 Mondays. From that is the plaguing of the people of Parthalon in Ireland. Other historians believe that it was in the 7th year of the age of Abraham that Parthalon took Ireland, for others say that it was the end of 2 years after the passing of Moses over the Red Sea, that Maspertius was then in the high kingship of the world. 328 years from then till the taking of Troy. See this? These monks were clever. They were trying to make everything fit. Irish mythological history and pseudo history, with the sacking of Troy, with Abraham, with Noah, with Moses and the Red Sea, and all of that. Amazing stuff. And of course, we've previously mentioned that the place that the people of Parthalon died is called, or was known as Tallaght Muintir Parthalon, the graves of the people of Parthalon, and that is the modern district of Dublin City called Tallaght. I think, Gary, the full Irish GK, you're from Tallaght, Gary, aren't you? That is something you're probably familiar with. We probably mentioned it previously. Yes, mythology, a journey into our unconscious, an endless path and a real encounter with our ancestry. Yes, indeed, Daisy. Ben Davis is saying, wonderful hearing this. I was a teenager when I first read Jim Fitzpatrick's Book of Conquests, and that was the beginning of the awakening. Good night. Brilliant stuff, Bev. Sorry, Bev, not Ben. I said Ben, I think. Bev. Yes, Tallaght, as it, Joan has the spelling. Tallaght, I think. Yes. Gallagher means plague pit in Irish, says Joan. Wow. Murphy means sea warrior. There you go. Well-travelled monk, says Helena. Absolutely 100% right. Definitely. Yeah, great. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. I'm sorry that I'm winding up a little bit sooner than I normally would, but I have to go and collect kids from music. And I organised this without consulting the family. So my own fault for double booking. Hopefully the washing machine will be working again. No, Tallaght means plague pit. That makes more sense. Let's just reference Dictionary of Irish Language to see if it's in there. It seems to be in numerous. Oh, okay, so many that I'm going to just search for the head word only. No, of course it's not in the bloody head word, which is typical. Rule of Tallaght. What is the Rule of Tallaght, anyone? I don't know what that is. See it referenced here in the Dictionary of the Irish Language quite a lot. The Rule of Tallaght. I have no idea. Of course, there was a monastery in Tallaght. Who was it? Gary Tallaght. That's the one. Yeah. I knew it wasn't spelt Tamlacht or Tavlacht. Yeah. Here we go. Burial place. Yeah. And with lots and lots of variants of the spelling. Let me see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 variants of the spelling. Tavlacht. I don't know what the Rule of Tallaght is. What was the Monastery of Tallaght and who founded it? Somebody. I'm going to have to look it up. Tallaght Monastery was a Christian monastery. This is Wikipedia, by the way. Was founded in AD 769 by Mael Rowan, a leader of the Culdee movement. Yes, I knew they're the Culdees, the Cairill Day, the ones who were very strict about moving away from the kings and the old druids, you know. The monastery included round towers which served as bell towers and/or a repository for the relics Mael Rowan had brought with him, reportedly relics of Saints Paul and Peter and hair of the Virgin Mary. Wow, there you go. The word Tallaght is a variant of the Irish word Tavlachta, which originates in the combination of the words tav, plague, and lecht, stone monument. There you go. The grave, the plague graves, basically. The name memorializes a plague said to have occurred in Ireland in AM 2820, a plague so vast that 9,000 persons in Parthalon's colony are said to have died in 1 week, all the dead being buried in one mass grave covered over with stones. The existence of ancient tumuli in the vicinity are sometimes offered as evidence of the truth of the legend, though archaeologists have yet to discover any evidence of a mass grave. Mael Rowan's companions at Tallaght included the Ulsterman Angus, that's Angus the Culdee, not to be confused with Angus Og of Newgrange of Sheed Broga or Sheemach and Og, and Mael Dihruv, two well-known figures in the Culdee movement. The names of 4 others at Tallaght are also known. Iranon Yochi, that name that's so familiar, king's name, Joseph and Dichul, all of whom are now considered saints in the Catholic tradition. Tallaght became a centre of learning in the 9th century. 2 of the major works produced there were martyrologies, one by Mael Rowan and one by Angus. In addition, life at the monastery was chronicled in a text now referred to as the Tallaght Memoir, probably completed by AD 840. Another product of the Tallaght Monastery was the Stow Missal, a work which emphasised the importance of community over individualism. After the death of Mael Rowan, the Stow Missal was carried by Mael Dihruv to the monastery at Terryglass. The rule of the monastery was similar to and probably based on that of the Abbey of Saint Arnould at Metz under Bishop Chrodegang. Metz, where is that? I'm pronouncing that as if it's French. Metz is in, yes, it is France. Food was to be of poor quality and lightly consumed to avoid gluttony, and drink was taken in moderation. The author of the Tallaght memoir left us this description. Not a drop of beer was drunk in Tallaght in Maelruin's lifetime. When his monks used to go anywhere else, they used not to drink a drop of beer in Cheer Colon, whomsoever they might happen to meet. However, when they went a long distance, in that case, they were allowed to drink. They must have looked forward to the long distance trips. Nor a morsel of meat was eaten in Tallaght in his lifetime, unless it were a deer or a wild swine. What meat there was at Tallaght was served to the guests. Activities at the monastery included mass, prayer, and beneficial labour, such as gardening and working at trades that supported the needs of the community. Those who were literate worked in the scriptorium, composing and copying manuscripts. The site of the monastery was given to Maelruin in honour of God and St. Michael by Kellach. He died in July 771. Of E. Donacha, grandson of Leinster King Donogh. The monastery withstood, and I see what I'm saying? The monks were given the land for the monastery by the local king. There you go. The monastery withstood an attack by Vikings in AD 811 and survived as a discrete entity to the time of the Anglo-Norman invasion of 1169. Subsequent to the turmoil of that period, Pope Alexander III issued a bull dated 20th of April 1179 by which Tallaght, along with its subsidiary chapels of Killohan and St. Bride's, was united to the Archdiocese of Dublin. And of course, we were talking before, weren't we, about the fairly major church reform of the 12th century. Then in 1223, Archbishop Henry de Landry, is that a French name? It looks like it, a Norman name, attached the deanery of Tallaght to St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. Gradually, the town of Tallaght grew up around the monastery, and the English appointed Archbishop of Dublin built or possibly restored a palace there. In 1324, the palace was fortified to protect the English in Tallaght from the marauding O'Byrne clan. I love the idea of a marauding clan, don't you? Exposing the need for protection and triggering the building of an Anglo-Norman castle, Bellegarde, just to the east of the monastery site. In 1324, Alexander de Bicknor built or restored an archiepiscopal manor at Tallaght, which was fortified later to protect the English in Dublin from the attacks of the O'Byrnes. Go on, the O'Byrnes! During the dissolution of the monasteries at the Reformation, the Protestant archbishops took charge of Tallaght. However, in 1812, the castle was sold to the Dominicans, who erected a Catholic novitiate and church there. The Dominican Retreat Centre stands on the site today. The monastery having deteriorated in the 17th century, the archbishop had it torn down in 1729, replacing it with an archiepiscopal residence. The tower is all that remains of the castle. There are only 2 reminders of the ancient monastery are visible today, both of which were roughly carved from granite boulders, an immense font, 5 feet in diameter, and a 3-foot tall cross, referred to as St. Maelruin's Cross. Today, the site is the location, of St. Maelruin's Church of Ireland, which was built in 1829. The church, along with the Dominican Retreat Centre, make Tallaght the site of Christian worship for nearly 1,300 years. Wow, brilliant. Anthony, your kids, says Joan. Don't worry, one of them is grown. She's an adult. She'll look after the younger one until I get there. It's okay. Anyway, thanks all for watching and hope you enjoyed yourselves. Don't forget, we will be back shortly with the second part of Tuan MacCairill. Special short live stream tomorrow to make an announcement relating to the... let's just call it a reveal live stream tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, as always, a reminder that if you would like to support the work of Mythical Ireland, the Patreon address is down here, patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. The patrons are the ones who chose the new cover for the Mythical Ireland revised and expanded edition, which is going to print in the next few weeks and which will be available for pre-order on the website this week and will be available for dispatch next month in November. Don't forget also to order your 2022 calendar at mythicalireland.com. Go into the gallery and shop and go into calendar and choose the 2022 one. I still have copies of the 2021 calendar, believe it or not. Somebody did order one the other day. Fascinating stuff. In the meantime, let's hope Facebook behaves itself. We'll speak to you very soon. Thank you for watching. A very good night to each and every one of you. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, as always, spread the word. Maybe there are friends of yours who might be interested in these. What time tomorrow? I haven't decided, Rins Ranger. I actually haven't decided, but it'll probably be tomorrow evening because I work during the day and the evening time suits the US and Canadian audience. If I do it in the morning time, they'll all still be in bed. So there you go. Good night and God bless, as they say, whatever deity you would like to bless you. So let it be. Ichawa Kulasov, Slán go fóill, bye for now. And most importantly of all, Toga Buggy. Take it easy.